everyone, and welcome to Fully Book Fest 2020. In celebration of National Reading Month, we are holding a series of fun events and sales for bookworms of all kinds for the month of November. Scholastic Asia will take over this afternoon for a talk on giving your children age-appropriate books during each stage of their reading development. Our speaker for today is Ms. Cecilia Jacinto. Teacher Cecilia Jacinto graduated cum laude with a bachelor's degree in psychology from the University of the Philippines, Diliman. Teacher Cecile has been working with Scholastic for 10 years now as reading program consultant, training manager, program implementation manager, and now as product development manager. She works with teachers and librarians to promote books and reading. Let's all welcome Teacher Cecile.
A wonderful day to everyone. Today I'm going to share with you some tips on how we can support children through the various stages of reading development and how we can match each child to the right books so we can raise children to be proficient and lifelong readers. My talk for today is divided into two parts. The first is where we are going to talk about why it is important for us to raise children as readers. The second part, which is the meat of the discussion, is where we are going to talk about the major characteristics and masteries at each stage of reading development and what we may, as parents and teachers, do to support children at each stage. I am also going to share with you what books appeal to children of different ages. Let me begin my talk by sharing with you a story entitled Frederick by Leo Leone. And I chose this story because I believe that it shows us the power and the magic of reading. So please just enjoy as I read aloud the story to you. Frederick by Leo Leone. All along the meadow where the cows grazed and the horses ran, there was an old stone wall. In that wall, not far from the barn and the granary, a chatty family of field mice had their home. But the farmers had moved away, the barn was abandoned, and the granary stood empty. And since winter was not far off, the little mice began to gather corn and nuts and wheat and straw. They all worked day and night, all except Frederick. Can you spot Frederick on the page? Frederick, why don't you work? They asked. I do work, said Frederick. I gather sun rays for the cold, dark winter days. And when they saw Frederick sitting there staring at the meadow, they said, And now, Frederick? I gather colors, answered Frederick simply, for winter is gray. And once Frederick seemed half asleep. Are you dreaming, Frederick? They asked reproachfully. But Frederick said, Oh no, I am gathering words, for the winter days are long and many, and we'll run out of things to say. The winter days came, and when the first snow fell, the 5 little field mice took to their hideout in the stones. In the beginning, there was lots to eat, and the mice told stories of foolish foxes and silly cats. They were a happy family. But little by little, they had nibbled up most of the nuts and berries. The straw was gone, and the corn was only a memory. It was cold in the wall, and no one felt like chatting. Then they remembered what Frederick had said about sun rays and colors and words. What about your supplies, Frederick? They asked. Let's see if Frederick's supplies will be of any use. Close your eyes, said Frederick, as he climbed on a big stone. Now I send you the rays of the sun. Do you feel how their golden glow? And as Frederick spoke of the sun, the 4 little mice began to feel warmer. Was it Frederick's voice? Was it magic? And how about the colors, Frederick? They asked anxiously. Close your eyes again, Frederick said. And when he told them of the blue periwinkles, the red poppies in the yellow wheat, and the green leaves of the berry bush, they saw the colors as clearly as if they had been painted in their minds. And the words, Frederick. Frederick cleared his throat, waited a moment, and then, as if from a stage, he said, I invite you to read this with me. Who scatters snowflakes? Who melts the ice? Who spoils the weather? Who makes it nice? Who grows the four-leaf clovers in June? Who dims the daylight? Who lights the moon? Four little field mice who live in the sky. Four little field mice like you and I. One is a spring mouse who turns on the showers. Then comes the summer who paints in the flowers. The fall mouse is next with walnuts and wheat, and winter is last with little gold feet. Aren't we lucky the seasons are four? Think of a year with one less or one more. When Frederick had finished, they all applauded. But Frederick, they said, you are a poet. Frederick blushed, took a bow, and said shyly, I know it. So just like how the words, the sun rays, and the colors that Frederick gathered have worked for him, I'd say that stories, books, and reading do the same for us. When we read, we become more imaginative and creative. Books and reading can turn us into poets and writers. And when you think of the books that have inspired you, that have made you reflect, and that have moved you to action, then you'd know that books don't just nourish the mind, but they nourish our spirits as well. And this is why we would want to gift children with a gift of reading. So what does reading make possible for children? I think nobody will dispute that reading makes us smart. Reading is a very rich and complex cognitive act. So much so that others would say that it's probably one of the best exercises that we can give our brains. That if we would want to combat dementia or Alzheimer's, then among the things that we can do is to actually read. And what's magical with reading is that you can just be seated in a corner reading a book, and you get to travel to different places, meet different people, and encounter different ideas and insights, and these make us smarter or more intelligent. We also know that reading is a very important academic skill, that reading is a tool to learn. If you try to think about it, is there any subject where kids don't have to read at all? I couldn't think of any. And so we would have to teach kids strategies so that they can become more skillful readers. And we would want them to read more often because researchers have shown and experience has shown us that the more children read, the better readers they become. Consider these facts too. Children between the ages of 10 and 16 who read for pleasure make more progress in vocabulary and spelling, which I believe is a given. But amazingly, they do better in the other subject areas as well, like in mathematics. And what we would want, the kind of reading that we would want children to do is what we call omnivorous reading, meaning we want them to be able to read widely, books of different genres, and we would want them to be able to read deeply topics that they would have to explore more or to learn more about. In a survey done by Scholastic with both parents and children in India, so when they were asked what they think are the most important skills that children should have, it is good to note that both parents and kids actually had strong reading skills as their top one. And for the parents, second was strong critical thinking skills, and third was strong social skills. And for the kids, after reading skills, they thought that strong computer skills would be necessary, followed by strong critical thinking skills. So it's good to know that the kids agree that it is important for them to have strong reading skills. What else are the values of good literature? Good literature supports psychological and emotional development. And if you consider how we adults would sometimes turn to books during difficult times in our lives, kids can actually do the same too. There are books that can help them better experience or go through the different milestones in their lives, and also the difficult incidences or experience in life, like probably the loss of a loved one. And two good books that can help children deal with death are Chester Raccoon and the Acorn Full of Memories and Missing May by Cynthia Ryland. Good literature also supports values education by contributing to the reader's growth into more compassionate human beings. So imagine the times when you have, or think of the times when you have cried with the characters in the stories that you've read, or probably in the movies that you've watched, or probably felt joyful and triumphant when they were victorious. So what's actually happening there is that we are empathizing with the characters in the story. And through these stories, we are able to practice empathy and compassion, which we would want children to have. In the survey done by Scholastic with parents, when they were asked, what values do you want instilled in your children? Their top answers were responsibility, self-confidence, honesty, respectfulness, and kindness. And it's nice to know that 95% of the parents actually agree that the characters in books can help children develop these positive qualities, and that the children themselves are actually looking for characters in books whom they can emulate. They are looking for characters who are smart, brave, and strong, for characters who face and overcome challenges, and for characters who are similar to them. So the kids would want to read or to find themselves in the stories that they read. Good literature also helps us with aesthetic development. It helps us get our notion of what is beautiful when we are exposed to beautiful art, to beautiful illustrations, and to beautiful language. And I'd say the ultimate benefit of good literature is the joy and pleasure that it brings us, such that we become very involved in the story, in what we're reading. And because we realize that reading is a joyful and enriching experience, then reading becomes a lifelong habit for us. And this is what we would want to happen with children. All right. So now we are moving to the second part, which is how we could support children to the various stages of reading development and how we can match them to the right books so we can raise them as readers. For this particular part of the talk, we're going to follow, or we're going to use Jean Shaw's stages of reading development, which you can see on the screen. And what we are being reminded here when we talk about reading development is that becoming good in reading is a process, and that this process happens in stages, which is largely a function of the kids' ages. Because when you consider the kid's age, then you would have an idea what his needs are and what he is ready for. And significant adults in kids' lives, you would like to be able to respond, to be responsive to the children's needs. When we give them something that they are not ready for, or something that is difficult for them, if we're talking about reading materials, then there's a chance that they can feel frustrated. And when they often feel frustrated, then that can actually breed anxiety and fear. In the same way, if what we give is something that they have outgrown, then probably the experience will be boredom, and that can breed demotivation and underachievement. So we want to meet kids where they are at, and be responsive to their needs. So we are going to use this guide in talking about books that will be appropriate for children at different stages, right? So let's begin with stage 0. In this case, it's just a pre-reading or pseudo-reading stage. So the kids are not yet actually reading. And this happens from birth to around age 6 for some children. During the pre-reading stage, the main tasks of the children would be to build knowledge about themselves and their world and to build their oral language skills. So as adults, how can we support them? It is important that we talk with children and encourage them to express themselves. So we have to language with children so they can develop their communication skills. We are encouraged to sing songs to them, to recite nursery rhymes and play finger games, not just because they're fun, but these are actually effective ways of exposing children to the sounds of the language. And then it is necessary that we provide hands-on opportunities for children to explore topics of interest to them, such as nature, animals, or cars, because this is the time when they're really getting to know more about themselves and their environment. um, we have to expose kids to a print-rich environment too. And I think a best example that I can give of a print-rich environment would be a preschool classroom that is teeming with print, with signs, with logos, with charts, with bulletin boards that would display the kids' works, with books, with writing materials. And such an environment would encourage kids to read and to write themselves. And an important element of a print-rich environment is also for the kid to have role models, to have adults whom he can see are reading and writing, so that he would get to appreciate these literacy activities as something that's useful in our day-to-day lives. All right. So what books would appeal to kids at these ages? So for infants, we have tactile books with flaps, mirrors, textures, and sounds for them to be encouraged to explore with their hands, especially, and with their other senses. Board books are good for infants, especially because they don't know how to handle books very well yet. And so these sturdy board books would be appropriate for them. Books with bold, high contrast illustrations or photos would be very attractive for infants. And there are wordless books as well. And the way that you can read this is that you can actually create your own story using the pictures or drawings as prompts. For toddlers, concept books would be very appropriate. Concept books would help them learn about their alphabet, about the numbers, about shapes, about names of common things like names of animals. And books with large, colorful pictures and simple storylines or rhymes would be very attractive. Activity books that can engage them and that are interactive, like books with a lift the flap and touch and feel features, are appropriate for toddlers as well. And book and toy sets would be fun to have too. There are board books for young children that can help them, or that you can actually share with them at particular milestones, or probably to celebrate particular occasions. And you can see on the screen some sample books. One of the best things that adults, that parents and teachers and caregivers can do for children at this age, and even the older kids, is to read to them. So let me just go back to that slide. There you go. When we read aloud to children, so we open to them the world of books, and then we are also able to model for them good reading. And we are able to make them realize that reading is pleasurable and a joyful activity. In the Kids and Family Reading Report and survey conducted by Scholastic in India, The parents of children aged 0 to 5 said that among their primary reasons for reading to children is for children to be able to develop their vocabulary and language skills. And sometimes we'd ask ourselves, is that so? If you're reading a book for children, can they really learn words from the books that they're reading? Now, I have an example for you, one of my favorite examples to drive the point that when children meet difficult words in the context of a story, it is actually easier for them to own these words, to make these words eventually a part of their vocabulary. They would more easily understand the words in the context of a story. So here is a book by Eric Carle. It's entitled Slowly, Slowly, So Said the Sloth. What do you know about sloths? We know that sloths are very slow animals. And so the characters, the animals in the story, at the beginning until the middle part of the story, they were asking the sloth why he's so slow, why he is so lazy. And until the end, the sloth finally replied. And I'd like you to read with me the sloth's reply. So finally, the sloth replied, "It is true that I am slow, quiet, and boring. I am lackadaisical. I dawdle and I dilly-dally. I am also unflappable, languid, stoic, impassive, sluggish, lethargic, placid, calm, mellow, laid back, and well, slothful. I am relaxed and tranquil, and I like to live in peace. But I am not lazy." Then the sloth yawned and said, "That's just how I am. I like to do things slowly, slowly, slowly." So look at those words. Those words are in a children's book. And no, if you try to think about it, when was the last time you used such words like lackadaisical or stoic or lethargic in your regular conversation? So my point here is, for children who've probably read this story, then at least the word slothful, I believe, would become a permanent part of their vocabulary, and it is easy for them to understand what this word means because it was presented in the context of a story. So definitely, reading can enrich our vocabulary. But what the children say is a best reason for them why they enjoy being read to. It's because it's a special time with a parent. It's a good bonding time, and they find joy in the fact that the parents and the adults in their lives are taking time to read with them. And so reading becomes a more pleasurable activity. All right, there you go. Now let's move on to the first stage in Jean Shaw's stages of reading development, and that's the initial reading or decoding stage. And in this particular stage, the children learn about the relationship between letters and sounds and between printed and spoken words. So this is where they actually start reading or decoding. The kids are able to read simple text, or what we call the phonically regular words, or the words that are spelled out as they are read or pronounced, and also what we call the high frequency words or sight words. At the end of this stage, children would understand around 4,000 words that they would hear, but they would only be able to read about 600. Now, how can we support children's literacy development at this particular stage? Direct instruction on phonics is necessary for these children who are beginning to read. And this is why schools would actually have phonics instruction for the early grades, because the children will have to be taught how to decode. Now, how can we support reading development at home? it would be good to read with children pattern predictable books. So eventually you would see that they are reading along until they can actually read their own on their own. And then please do continue to read to children at this age. And you can choose books that are more complex or that are a level above what they can actually read independently. Because when you read to children, you are there to support comprehension. And as I have mentioned a while ago, listening comprehension is much more effective still at this particular stage in a child's reading development. What books would appeal to these children? Young children love stories that are filled with action or those that are fast-paced in terms of the plot. Those with dialogue, and they love it very much when you read to them and change your voice according to the characters or when you read expressively. Concise or short stories, stories with an element of surprise or humor, those that have repetition and cadence, those that have rhyme and rhythm when you read them, and it would just sound like music to their ears. And those that are beautifully illustrated and books with happy endings. And what you can see on the screen are actually some of my favorite read alouds for children. For preschoolers, bright, interesting picture books would be very attractive. Simple stories with basic plot that they can easily follow, and nursery rhymes and poetry as well. Scholastic has come up with what we call the Acorn Readers, and this is our line of early readers for children who are just learning to read. These books have easy to read text, and the stories are just short. There's plenty of humor, so they're fun to read, and each page has a full color artwork so that the books would be attractive for children. So you might want to explore Acorn books from Scholastic. Now moving on to the second stage of reading development, which is confirmation and fluency, which usually happens at ages 7 to 8 or grades 2 to 3. So what the kids are confirming here would be the decoding skills that they've learned in the previous stage, and they get to practice now, and they become more fluent and confident as readers, and they are able to read books on their own. At the end of stage 2, still the children's listening vocabulary would be more efficient, with understanding around 9,000 words, but they would be able to expand their reading vocabulary. They would be able to read around 3,000 words by the end of stage 2. How can we support children at this particular stage? Have them read familiar, interesting materials. And they're actually encouraged to reread these materials so we can build their confidence as readers, and so that they can practice for reading fluency. Expose children to different types of reading materials and allow the children to read in pairs or small groups for practice. Children can even practice reading to their pets if they'd like to do that. What books would be interesting for school-aged kids or those ages 6 to 7? Read alouds that offer appealing storylines and illustrations. Some may be ready for simply written chapter books, and it's good to expose them to a good mix of fiction and non-fiction books. Among the popular titles or series for kids at this age, for non-fiction, we have what we call the Magic School Bus. And the Magic School Bus makes science learning more exciting for kids, as they are taken on a ride in the school bus and they get to explore, let's say, for example, the insides of the human body to see or to learn how it works, go to different planets and to explore the solar system, or probably to learn more about the moon. So it's a fun way to learn science. Lego has also come up with nonfiction books, particularly on science. And I think this can be encouraging for reluctant readers to find the toys that they enjoy in books. So hopefully they'd have more incentive, or they'd be get more excited to read. Scholastic has a line, an early chapter book line for readers who are practicing fluency. And we call these readers the branches books, and they are also easy to read. High interest, they have high interest content. The plot is fast paced, and there are illustrations on every page. So you have some examples here. You have the Unicorn Diaries for children who are into fantasy and magic, and that's a sample spread. And you have Dragon Masters as well. And for those who are into scary stories, then they may want to read Eerie Elementary. For children ages 8 to 10, they may be ready for longer chapter books and for book series too. So it's at this age when many kids would start a following for a particular book series. So for example, you're into mystery, then probably you'd be interested in either Encyclopedia Brown or Nancy Drew. Or if you are into adventure stories and mystery also, then you might find the 39 Clue series attractive. Some kids would find joy in reading joke books or humorous books like Captain Underpants. And some may be drawn to comic books or what we call graphic novels. So here are some popular titles for kids at this age. Very popular would be the Geronimo Stilton and Thea Stilton books, which I believe is a good bridge from picture books to the more complex chapter books. So these are more simply written chapter books, and you'd see that there are a lot of illustrations, colorful illustrations, and some of the words are even written creatively to mimic the meaning of the word. There you go. So some samples, and I think what the kids like about Geronimo Stilton and Thea Stilton stories is that it takes them to different adventures. Some kids may be into scary stories, and Goosebumps is actually popular if they want these horror or scary stories. And the Babysitter's Club is popular for preteens, and I think kids are drawn to the Babysitter's Club because they can see themselves in the stories, and these are what we call realistic fiction. So they are able to relate with characters in the story or in the stories. Dogman is a graphic novel for young kids, and the superhero here, or the hero in the story, is part dog and part policeman. So the kids just love the humor and the illustrations in this particular series. For the kids who would want to draw themselves, and how-to books like Guide to Creating Comics in 3D and the 3D Guide to Creating Heroes and Villains can be interesting for them. All right, now let's move on to the next stage, to stage 3 of Jean Shaw's stages of reading development. And this is reading for learning the new, which happens between grades 4 to grade 8 or 9. It's at this stage where the children transition from learning to read to reading to learn. So they already know how to read. They are skilled readers as well. And the focus now is more on reading to learn. So it's at this stage where they are exposed to a broader range of materials, and they get to explore a broader range of topics. And it's at this stage wherein the students get to advance from decoders to becoming strategic or more skillful readers. So how can we support children at this particular stage? It would be good to expose them to different types of reading materials, and also challenge them to read more complex fiction, nonfiction, and biography and the like. There are simply written biographies that children can enjoy, and you have some samples on the screen. It would also be good to provide these children opportunities for reading and for discussing with their peers what was read. And this is to expose them also to different viewpoints so that they can begin to analyze and criticize what they read and to prepare them for the next stage, which we will talk about in a bit. What will be attractive to students ages 11 to 13? So books in a series, award winners, how-to books that can help them with their hobbies and interests, non-fiction books, and also magazines and newspapers. Actually, if you have reluctant preteens and teens, probably a good way to encourage them to read is to start them by reading magazines on topics of interest. Let's say they're interested in sports, then you can get them sports magazines to encourage them to read, and hopefully eventually they would expand their the genres that they are reading. There are also graphic novels for more mature readers, and one of the more popular graphic novels, which is also realistic fiction, are the books by Raina Telgemeier, and they are popular with kids because they can relate to the characters in the stories, because what Raina featured here would be her own experiences. These are actually memoirs. So these are her own experiences as a teen during middle school and high school. And these are very relatable stories for children. If you are choosing books for kids, then it would be good to consider the award winners rather. And the most popular among the most popular awards for books for children would be the Newbery Awards, which is the award given to the year's best story written for children in the US. And in the Philippines, our counterpart, I'd say, would be the Palanca and the Salanga Awards for children's literature. And then we also have awards for beautifully illustrated books, which are the Caldecott Awards. And in the Philippines, we have the Alcala Awards. All right, let's move on to the next stage of reading development. Yeah, but before that, at the end of stage 3, if the students are already, or if the children are already proficient readers, then reading would equal their listening skills. And for the more proficient ones, it is actually possible that they would be more effective in reading than in listening. So I don't know with you, but you might want to try to think about how you learn better. Is it by listening to something, or is it by reading something? Probably for us who are very proficient readers would actually prefer learning by reading. We are already effective or efficient readers. All right, so moving on to stage 4, which is multiple viewpoints, which happens in high school. So the children are ready for text with greater depth of treatment and greater variety and points of view. So how do we support these students? We have to continue to provide them access to a wide array of literature, of text or reading materials. And we would want to encourage them to respond to what they read through discussions and writing. What would be interesting reads for older children? So older children may be interested in what we call escape books. We call them as the children escape into the world of the story. So they forget for a while their reality and they put themselves in the shoes of the characters they read about, and they're just lost in the world of the book or the story. So escape books can be romance books or the suspenseful ones. Some may be interested in gothic tales or in sci-fi and fantasy. And then these older children are also looking for stories that tell of moral courage, integrity, and strength. So, as was mentioned in the earlier part of the presentation, students or children are actually also looking for role models in the books that they read. And then stories that explore universal themes, especially those concerning relationships with oneself, with other people, with nature, and with technology. What would be attractive books for teens? So some may be ready for what we call the young adult or the YA novels. Book movie tandems may be interesting for them as well, and especially for reluctant readers. So maybe what you can do is to have them read the book and as a treat, watch the movie afterwards. Nonfiction and biographies may be interesting for them too, and magazines on favorite sports teams, rock stars, hobbies, or television shows. What are awards that you may consider when choosing books for young adults? So you can see I've listed some. You may want to consider the American Library Association's top 10 best books for young adults, the quick pick for reluctant young adult readers, the New York Public Library books for the teenage, the Coretta Scott King Award, and the Michael Prince Award for Excellence in Young Adult Literature. And what are the things that you can do to encourage them to read? Build on your teens' interests, so we know how the power of choice is important, that we make them choose books that are interesting to them. Then read some books written for teens yourself so that you can make recommendations and so that you can also ask your kids to make recommendations of books that they think you could and you would enjoy. Share an article you clipped from the paper, a poem, a letter, or an interesting internet feature without turning it into a lesson. And acknowledge your teen's mature interests. So probably if you find a book that you think your child may already handle and may find interesting, then please make you can lend her the book or recommend the book to her. Have your teen blog or join social networking accounts where teens share their reading responses and build virtual bookshelves of what they have read. Epic Reads and YA Book Central are sample YA blogs, right? And then the last stage of Jean Shaw's stages of reading development, this is where we are at, and this is where we would want children to be. It's what we call the construction and reconstruction stage. And this usually from age 18 and above for those in college and beyond. And the reading here is something that we can describe as rapid and efficient. And reading is used for one's own needs and purposes. So we can be more purposeful in what we read and how we read. Now we are able to consider what our goal is. Are we just reading for pleasure, or are we reading for work or for research? And this particular stage is named such because we are already able to integrate what we know with what others know and what we read about, and we are able to synthesize these things, and we are able to create new knowledge. So what we are actually encouraged to do at this particular age is to keep on reading, to challenge ourselves to read more complex and varied materials. And I think what's most important is that we get to participate in discussions about stories and issues, and that we write ourselves too. As parents and teachers, among the most important things that we have to do for the children in our lives is to help each one find the right book that will actually turn him into a reader. Scholastic CEO and President, Mr. Richard Robinson, says that finding the right book and the right time can light an emotional spark within children that motivates them to read more, understand more, and read joyfully. When that happens, the world opens and everything becomes possible. While I was making this presentation, I came across a quote from Neil Gaiman that echoes this. And he says that the simplest way to make sure that we raise literate children is to show them that reading is a pleasurable activity. And that means finding books that they enjoy, giving them access to those books, and letting them read them. So even giving them time to read for pleasure is actually very important. So what are important considerations for us when we choose books for children? Of course, it would be important to see if the books would match the child's reading ability. And you can ask the child to read the book that he is about to read. So maybe he can sample a full page and then try to determine if it's too easy, too hard, or just right. And what would be the experience like for each type of reading material? A book is too easy if you know all the words, and you might find it boring because you can read it very quickly and it's effortless. Now, a book is too hard if you take too long to read it, probably because there are a lot of difficult words and the sentences are too complex for you and you are confused, meaning probably you'd have to reread often for you to be able to understand, and that you may need lots of help in understanding the text. And a book is just right if you know most of the words, and that if yes, you can actually encounter difficult words, but probably you would be able to know what they mean through context. And you can read a book without problems. You can apply the skills that you have learned to understand what you are reading, and you actually have a sense of achievement that, and you have that feeling that I understood it and I actually enjoyed it. So if you want kids to become readers, and we would want them to have more experience reading just right books. Scholastic came up with what we call the Everyday Book Box to help give children access to books that they can read that are matched to their ability and that are also of interest to them. So Scholastic has come up with the Everyday Book Box. There are 13 different boxes, and each box would contain 50 leveled fiction and nonfiction books to engage young learners. And what you can see on the screen are the 50 books in Everyday Book Box 3. The yellow box is recommended for children ages 6 to 7 whose Lexi levels would be between 160 to 400. So that reading ability is for proficient first grader. So please do explore the Everyday Book Box and see if this is something that your child would benefit from. As I have mentioned, there are 13 different boxes. Colors would correspond to the age and the grade level of the child, so you can see which one is appropriate for your child. Another consideration when we choose books for kids is we also would like to share with them what we enjoyed ourselves as children, as teens, and now as adults. And I think that would be good to share something that you really like, because the child will sense if you are excited about the book that you are sharing. So in the Kids and Family Reading Report that Scholastic did in the US, when the parents were asked, what are the top books that you can recommend to children? Here are the top 5. They're recommending Harry Potter primarily because it's a series that grows with a child. It's a series that you can enjoy as a kid, as a teener or a teenager, and as an adult. And that more than a story about magic, it actually is a story about friendship, loyalty, and the triumph of good versus evil. Parents would also recommend Dr. Seuss books, especially for younger kids, because they are great for building the children's vocabulary, And these books are actually fun to read aloud and to listen to because of the rhyme and rhythm in the books. And the characters and the story events are actually very imaginative. Diary of a Wimpy Kid is something that middle schoolers enjoy very much, and early high school students too, because they can relate with the characters in the story. Parents are recommending Magic Tree House for younger children. This is actually historical fiction because the characters in the story get to time travel to visit different eras in our history. So they learn about that particular period in time. And the Chronicles of Narnia is also being recommended by parents because of the great life lessons that the books in the series would teach, and because it's something that they enjoyed as a child and would like to share with their children as well. But ultimately, I think what's very important to consider when our goal is to motivate kids to read is actually to consider their interest and to have them choose. Children read more, understand more, and are more likely to continue reading when they have the opportunity to choose what they read. So you have here the power of choice. And the Kids and Family Reading Report that Scholastic did for India, we found out, according to the children's responses, that their favorite books and the ones that they are most likely to finish are the ones they pick out themselves. And you'd see that here too when they were asked, what do you want in books? So the kids said that we want books that make us laugh, that teach us something new, that let us use our imagination, that have characters that are smart, strong, or brave, that have a mystery or problem to solve, that tells a true story. And 86% of them, of children aged 6 to 17, said that my favorite books are the ones that I have picked out myself. So considering students' interest in the books is actually very important when we choose books for them, right? So I hope that each one of us will be able to help the children in our lives look for that book, for that one good book that can turn them into a reader. And we want to do that because we know that reading can give us so much joy, that reading can enrich our lives. As George R.R. Martin says, a reader lives 1,000 lives before he dies. The man who never reads lives only one. There you go. Thank you very much, everyone, for giving me time to share with you. And Scholastic and Fully Booked look forward to raising readers with you.
Thank you, Teacher Cecile, and of course to everyone who joined us today. Find the right books for the right age of your children. Check out our selection from Scholastic Asia on books for all ages on www.fullybookonline.com, where you can get them and other great reads at 15% off until November 8th. Fully Book Fest 2020 will be ongoing for the month of November. Follow us on our social media accounts for more great content and reads. We hope to see you soon in our future events and our virtual shelves. Keep safe and keep reading.